Thank you, sir. Next, we're going to have a panel discussion about the civil cooperation developing the unmanned systems for the defense community. This panel will be moderated by the U.S. Army Major General retired John M. Urias. He's the Executive Vice President of Oshkosh Corporation and the President of the Oshkosh Defense. Please welcome to the floor, sir.
So let me just start out. We'll do the best we can for the time allotted. When you think about the unmanned systems that are out and have been proliferated throughout the world in large quantity today, the development and the use of these systems are no longer carried out by the traditional defense and aerospace industry. Today, defense contractors are facing reduced military spending on large-scale procurement programs and a shift towards research and development for the next generation of unmanned aerial systems, while burgeoning commercial players are challenged with regulatory barriers. Market drivers include intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and combat operations for defense, and agriculture, wildlife research and survey, climate and pollution monitoring operations in the commercial sector. Our panel today, Civil Cooperation in Developing Unmanned Aerial Systems for the Defense Community, will focus on what defense companies and militaries learn from their successes and how all parties need to cooperate to ensure national security. So it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, the only one that's left, sorry, Mr. Eric Mathewson, who is the Director of Unmanned Airborne Systems Programs at Boeing Defense, Space and Security. And then, should he be able to come in, I will not take the time to introduce Mr. Carlo Logli, the CEO of Piaggio Aerospace, who I hope will be here soon. So, Eric, I want to make this a conversation. You and I.
Okay.
And I'd like you to give us a perspective. You've got a vast experience in the unmanned aerial system arena. Are defense and commercial unmanned systems technologically and operationally related? And if so, how? That's a broad question, so you can talk as long as you need to.
All right, so it was about 15 years ago, I was flying F-15s and hurt my back and became involved for the first time with unmanned systems. At first, I was a little tentative. A fighter pilot, unmanned systems? It just doesn't work. But I learned very quickly that really there's nothing unmanned about an unmanned system. It's just one more platform or capability that creates an effect. As we evolved unmanned systems, and I would say it was a revolution in military affairs based on a conscious application of increasingly automated and integrated systems that provided you with an enhancement of capability, but also a multiplication of force strength. The idea that we could use unmanned systems, maybe 5, 10 of them airborne at one time, automatically collecting information, being managed by one crew. Incredible force multiplier. Over the past decade and a half then, as I became a stronger and stronger believer in unmanned systems, I began to realize that really everything we had done, all the applications and all the technology also have applications within the civil and commercial arena. And to me, that's really where we're going to be going. I think initially the military was driving technology and driving concepts of operations, but I would suggest that really the civil and commercial applications are greater. And what we'll find over time is that for border security, for monitoring pipelines, environmental monitoring, disaster relief support. There's a limitless list of applications that all stem from the military experience that we've had. I also think this applies to ground vehicles, maritime surface vehicles, and undersea vehicles. It's the conscious application of automated technologies which mitigate the risk to humankind and allow us to accomplish things we never could have in the past.
Well, Eric, I think that's profound statements that you made. So let me ask you this, a follow-on. You said that it's really not unmanned, okay? It's an application of automation and new technology. So in your experience at Boeing, how has this unmanned technology been accepted? Because it does involve change, and change is hard. And so what has been your experience in that arena?
Both when I was in the military and also in industry, it's obvious that there's still some level of cultural resistance. And at the core of it, it has to do with trust. Do we trust these systems to operate reliably and safely? And so when you see, for example, the regulatory bodies that control airspace and the hesitancy to integrate unmanned into those airspaces, it's very understandable. It has to do with trust. And so, first, my observation is a cultural resistance. Sometimes it's based on, I just don't like them. But really, more importantly, it's really based on trust. And trust is based on safety. Ultimately, what will happen is that the efficiencies associated with unmanned, because there's no reason to do it unless it's more efficient, will make compelling financial arguments, business cases, that will, if you will, empower us or force us to invest in the safety and reliability required to develop that trust. So, to answer your question, it's about trust. There's still resistance. A lot of people don't know about it. But we're getting there. And once again, I've got to get back to civil commercial. Once we get into the civil commercial realm and governments open up airspace because we've invested in safe and reliable systems, it will become more and more commonplace, whether it be a car on a highway, an airplane providing disaster relief, saving people at sea, monitoring the movement of people across borders. All of this become an integrated network of capability, and we won't even think about it.
Well, thanks, Eric. So in terms of how at Boeing you take existing technology and you put it on an unmanned aerial platform, how do you determine what you're going to put on that platform from a requirement standpoint? Because, I mean, this is relatively new technology, and so how do you at Boeing decide what research and development areas you're going to invest in that will lead you to a capability that you hope that you can sell? Because I guess you take a risk in that regard. Is that?
Wow, yeah, there is a risk. There is a level of uncertainty. In Boeing, and I think across industry, companies like Adasi, for example, you weigh the risks very carefully. You do the traditional market analysis, you develop business cases, and I think what allows you to do that is that there's really nothing unique about unmanned. It's just a platform, and even if it's not automated but controlled from a ground control station, it's just a cockpit. So you think about, well, then what does unmanned give you? Well, it gives you persistence, and it gives you, so that any place where the human is the limitation, unmanned becomes compelling. Is it dangerous work? Disaster relief can be dangerous. Disaster relief may require you to be over an area providing continuous monitoring for extended periods of time. So when we look at business cases and where to invest our money, we're fortunate that it's not just us who have that vision. There are companies like Adasi, there are companies all around the world who have visions of what they would like. And they may be mining companies, they may be agricultural companies, and so what's if you will, informing our investment today to create the capabilities for the future are actually other business segments having nothing to do with the military industry. And that really is one of the most exciting developments I personally have seen. And I suspect in Oshkosh, you may be seeing the same sort of thing.
So that it just strikes a chord with me because it appears, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday as we were preparing for this panel, that in the case of unmanned aerial systems, it appears that the defense side of the spectrum has driven the capability that is now being applied commercially. And I know my colleague John Beck is going to speak on the unmanned ground vehicle side, and I'll pose a question for him in advance, but maybe you can also comment on this, Eric, that it appears that in this case, the commercial side, such as cruise control, anti-collision capabilities, and I hope I'm not stealing John's thunder, but the commercial side of the application is now driving defense. So would you talk a little bit about that, your perspective?
You know, it's one of the neat things about unmanned over the years is the fact that in order to accelerate the process of developing these systems, we've looked to off-the-shelf technologies. So these are commercial technologies. So I agree with you, but not completely, because what I think is that the culture within the military, which had the freedom to really investigate capability and to field capability, using off-the-shelf technologies, using specially developed technologies, I think that's how it really started. There's no doubt in my mind that, like I said, for airborne, I think for ground as well, the commercial is going to be the driver to a great extent, and the greatest investment will be done on the commercial side because it's just so financially compelling. So what you have is the military leading the way, I think, in all areas, but primarily in the cultural acceptance, once again leading to trust. The commercial is going to be taking over, but it's just simply technologies. I think they have a long way to go still as far as that trust in developing. I think it's a very good, I'll use Adasi again as an example of a company with vision that's taking technologies and applying them to requirements. This is a good example of where you have the meeting of both commercial and military vision, commercial and military technologies, using those technologies and vision to develop the unmanned future, which I think is largely about autonomous capabilities, the conscious application of those technologies to create efficiencies that will serve mankind.
Well, from the standpoint of cost, as the proliferation process takes place, you would automatically assume that the cost should begin to drop. Are you seeing that happening? No?
I think the truth of it is there's an expectation that unmanned is somehow cheaper. It's a platform, it has capabilities, that means sensors, it's really no different. So if you want an unmanned system to operate like an F-35 or an F-15 or an F-18 or an Apache helicopter or a truck, you're going to pay for an Apache helicopter, an F-18, and F-15. There's really no savings there. But where you realize your savings is because the efficiency of the system, because of automated technologies, allows you to reduce your operating costs significantly. The ability to provide persistence over a particular airspace or what have you, it's efficiency, savings. And so that's where you realize your savings. It's not in the hardware. It's not in the technology development. Over the past decade and a half, arguably, we didn't do any big jumps. There were some people that built the foundation for unmanned, and then we just did iterative type improvements. because everything had to happen quickly. No one could wait. We had to provide that capability quickly to the militaries around the world. But really, so ultimately, it's that additional investment required to take the next leap to really recognize efficiencies. It will save us money in operations, but the hardware still requires the same investment as anything else.
Well, I personally had the perception that it would be less costly, and that that would be very attractive. I guess just the packaging alone. You've got an airborne platform, it's unmanned, and so just the repackaging is pretty challenging, I'm sure. So that you have a like capability that that parallels the manned capability. So, and that's the expectation. You don't want any degradation in capability. So therefore, I guess you talked me into it, Eric.
And the other thing too, I think we haven't really explored enough, and that is, we think about operations costs being maybe aircrew or maybe less sorties generated because of persistence. We also should consider the production and development of these systems being requiring less touch labor. Why can we not automate the flight line? And so these are areas we need to explore to recognize once again, or realize once again, the efficiencies inherent in automated systems. If we can have an automated flying system or an automated vehicle on the ground, why can't we maintain them in an automated fashion?
So then your previous comment about revolution of military affairs, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. This conscious application of automated technologies is a revolution in military affairs in my mind because it's changing everything we do. Unmanned itself is really, it's all around us. Our phones, our computers on our desks. There's automation that is around us every day. But being conscious of it and applying it to the effects that we require both for the military and civil and commercial markets, that's what's changing things. Much like the invention of the longbow. It's the ability to project effect at great distance while protecting your vulnerabilities that's very attractive and compelling. Much like the development of steel-sided ships, combustion engine, and all these sorts of things, it had to do with greater performance, more efficient performance, therefore more flexibility and capability. By being aware of how we apply these technologies, these algorithms, we take the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, act, and we reduce it via the power of the processor to an OODA point. Once again, efficiency and capability and enhancement. So I think really, if nothing else, it's the processor, and this is leading us. What we're seeing is the embodiment of this revolution, and it just happens to be unmanned.
Well, I do know that I've read recently, and I guess it was the aftermath of the drone that ended up on the White House lawn, that the Federal Aviation Administration is looking at setting a ceiling from 0 to 500 feet as open airspace for UASs. Can you comment, as a former pilot, can you comment on that in terms of, and I guess I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes.
Well, that's my job as a moderator, I guess. But can you comment on that in terms of challenges? Because it seems like you're basically wide opening airspace for a potential collision with either an aircraft or some other airborne platform.
Well, this is an excellent question for Carlo.
Well, Carlo, thanks for coming.
All right, so I'll take a crack at this, and then we can pass it to Carlo. But really can't say, I think none of us can really speak for the FAA or any other regulatory body. But I will say one thing. It's critical for them and their mission, which is the safety of the airspace around the world. It's critical that we support that. Sometimes we complain it's moving too slowly and so forth, but it's for good reason. They must ensure safety, and we can't take a risk. I personally think that unmanned systems, as we call them today, can integrate fully into the skies around the world? Absolutely. But we haven't proven it. We haven't proven the levels of safety and reliability that's required. Will we? Absolutely. And that's why we need to work together, and that's why the work being done, for example, here in the UAE and in Abu Dhabi with the DASI, which is developing systems which are more and more reliable that we can trust. So the FAA has every right, and they're correct, as does the ICAO and other regulatory bodies, to ensure safety, and now it's our job to work together to create the solutions for the future. Carlo, welcome.
My apologies, first of all, to the audience, then to the moderator and to my colleague from Boeing. Really, I was blocked by UAE top-level officers, so I have an excuse at least, but really, I apologize because I wanted to come really on time on this important conference. So,
well, Carlo, thank you for being here. We're going to let Eric off the hook for a few minutes. And if I can ask you, at Piaggio Aerospace, and you as the Chief Executive Officer, how did you make the decision to develop unmanned aerial systems, and what business growth do you expect in this particular area?
Thank you. Finally, Piaggio Aerospace is a company which is small, relatively small, is 1,300 people, and active mainly in general aviation business segment. And there was a lot of innovation in the company, always R&D to pushing the management towards a new solution finally. And there was a moment where we were thinking, should we do a family of general aviation aircraft, so to invest in this segment, or to diversify and to be present in two segments with two versions of the same platform. And so finally that was the orientation, and then the decision came to develop in parallel with a maritime or multi-purpose aircraft which is manned, to develop an unmanned vehicle. The idea was based on the concept that if you got a platform which finally shall be suitable for to be transformed in unmanned, you save a lot of money, because the platform is certified, can fly all conditions, is already offering those features who the unmanned segment needs, like two engines, to have no problem with icy condition, enough payload, enough range. You can say meet the requirement of this market. So finally, we took the platform and we developed an unmanned vehicle which reduced the development time over a couple of years and proportionally the investment.
Well, in terms of your success rate at this point, I don't recall how long you've been working in this market space.
Unfortunately, I should say that it's almost 30 years working in aerospace business, and UAV, the unmanned was always my passion, because finally, for me, the future is unmanned. I don't know if there are pilots here, but finally it's unmanned with the pilots on the ground, because it's a question, even, I don't know, maybe you touched the subject of the dual use of the unmanned in the civil market. For me, the real future is to transform our experience on the military side on the civil market for unmanned vehicles.
So that's your vision? You want to take the defense capability that has been demonstrated and is proliferating throughout the world and transport that into the commercial sector as well?
But I think that it's our common goal. All the industries, they look forward to let's say, to optimize our investment and to have this investment that start with the military application to be transformed in civil application. By the way, having the civil application realized, we can reduce our cost, we can be even more appealing for the military side, because cost is another parameter which is important for both entities, military and the civilian.
Well, before you came in, Carlo, I asked Eric the same question, so I'd like to pose it to you. Change is hard, and obviously taking a system that was manned and making that system unmanned for good reason, both of you have articulated those reasons. Have you seen any pushback? Have we received pushback just because there is change involved?
Okay, allow me to tell you that what I really hate when in conversation with my employees or with their counterparts is the answer, we never do. Why I should do that? We never did. We never did. This is the first reaction that I really don't like at all. So, yes, I receive several answers from even my first line managers saying, we didn't do that, why should do that? We have our business built over the years, now we jump in this new market. So, and especially when you talk about the dual use, the dual use is seen like, civil, Airbus, Boeing. My friend from Boeing, they know that we got technology, they got the technology, but we too, we got the technology to have a civil aircraft flying unmanned. It's no problem. We could have a Boeing, I think, unmanned, but the problem is that the public perception and so on, we have the airspace shall be open to this kind of operations, but if you want, it's more maybe my generation or the previous generation, but at least my generation, because my daughter, who is 25, when I ask her, you would feel scared to have a Paris-New York flight with an unmanned vehicle, and she answered me, no. Why? I took the underground, it's the train unmanned. So she's new generation, no? I think I would still feel scared myself, no? I am an old man. So the new generation fly already thinks unmanned. So
I think that's an excellent point. The generational differences that we have, obviously the younger generation, about my age. What?
My age.
You don't agree? But the younger generation, they grow up on this these automated systems, so they're much more apt to be comfortable. I think that's a very, very good point. Well, I think we've run out of time today. I wanted to give you an opportunity to make any closing statements that you would like.
Fly unmanned, please.
No, I just would like to thank everyone for just the honor and pleasure of being here. And it really means a lot. And on a personal note, I have never seen such a beautiful venue for a show of this size. This is hands down the best I've ever seen. My first time to IDEX. Anyway, just thank you. Thank you, sir.
And I would agree, having been at IDEX and participated in these kinds of conferences and panels, this forum is very, very good. It's a marked improvement from previous years. And I just think, if you would, think about the vision here, and think about persistence in driving change, because change is necessary to provide the capabilities that the world needs. And so I think we have two leaders here that are leading the charge. And I think we're fortunate to have those visionary leaders in industry who will make it happen, as others before them have made it happen in other dimensions. So please join me in a warm thank you of applause for our expert panel today. Thank you very much.